Guys who married bridezillas, what happened after the wedding? Story 1. Divorce after 2 years. She moved her stuff out while I was at work. I cried, and then when I got remarried to someone new, I realized what real love was. Also, my ex herself on 5 separate occasions when she was blackout drunk because she was an alcoholic. So I don't miss that either. Miss that. Story 2. My brother's fiancé went off on my mom in front of me and my sister when he was 45 minutes late to the rehearsal due to his best man's car tire blowing out. Where is your of a son? Dude should have never showed up for the wedding. Not only a bridezilla, but a total utter sociopath. Her life was completely fabricated, and her parents, who didn't show up for the wedding, called my mom to tell her the truth about it the day after. She had a rap sheet a mile long and a prison record. But my brother, who just wanted to believe that people can change, stuck it out for 7 years. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Story 3. My sister was labeled a bridezilla by the staff at her venue. I heard them. However, the chair coverings were red, supposed to be brown. There was no mirror in the bridal suite for her to get ready at. The photographer was late. The makeup artist was very late, hence the issue with the mirror. The buffet was totally wrong. Not a single dish she chose. And they charged $25 a person for what was to be a 4-tier chocolate fountain, but ended up being a small plastic contraption that she saw them unboxing from Walgreens the day of. It's a convenience store. On top of it all, the waitstaff was 1/2 the number the contract stated, and the DJ refused to honor the playlist selected. So yeah, she lost it at the venue. Story 4. My buddy married a bridezilla. She was a bridezilla long before the wedding, and they had dated for about 7 years. I have no idea how they are doing. I just kind of stopped talking to him a few years after she claimed I ruined his birthday by remaining sober. I had driven 5 hours to be at his birthday. Story 6. I married a bridezilla. He is a lovely, sweet, thoughtful man, but boy did he lose it surrounding the wedding. I could have been married with about 3 special people there. He needed 200 plus. As far as I was concerned, we could eat off paper plates and napkins and have a big bonfire to burn them afterwards. He need personalized moist towelettes. You get the point. He is a lovely person and I love him dearly, but I will never marry him again. Story 7. My sister was a bridezilla. She announced a 2-year engagement and asked me to be MOH. Then I got the opportunity to move across the country to pursue my career. It was 18 months before her wedding, and her reaction to the news was, "You're going to leave me here to plan my wedding all by myself." Like I had signed away my right to have a life for the honor of being in her wedding. She made us all spend hundreds of dollars on specialized dresses. The bachelorette party had a dress code and a steep price tag. For 10 years before her engagement, I had consistently had blue/green/purple hair. But knowing she is conservative, I let the color grow out. I had natural color, but a short bob with undercut that she went on about. In the lead-up, we talked every few days to discuss her wedding. It was the closest we'd ever been. And then as soon as she was married, I got radio silence. And she even forgot my birthday. Needless to say, we don't speak anymore, so I have no idea how her marriage is going. Story 8. Married for 7 years before I bailed. Best decision of my life. Got married again 5 years later to a girl that just wanted a justice of the peace wedding. Second best decision of my life. Story 9. I knew I would have been a bridezilla. I get extremely stressed about things and refuse to ask for help. My husband and I got married at the courthouse. Best decision ever. Story 10. My GF of 10 years is very down-to-earth and level-headed. We finally decided to get married later this year for a few reasons, and she's feeling a lot of phantom pressure to do things a certain way. It's not like there is an overbearing mom or catty friends applying pressure or expectations. It's just the whole idea is overwhelming and filled to the brim with opportunities to make a decision you might end up regretting later, or forver. I've taken a more active role in narrowing down options instead of asking her to pick a perfect solution out of 5 million possible options. It's helped somewhat, but there is still a lot of pressure on her, seemingly out of nowhere, to make a series of decisions that all depend upon the first few big decisions that are weighing heavily on us. All this to say, I can see how this kind of stuff could turn a normal woman into a lunatic. These types of events tend to bring latent family and friend drama to the forefront, and emotions are high before even really gets started. My guess is that a lot of the bridezillas were actually lovely people who calmed down and returned to being lovely people after the stress of the wedding stuff is removed. Story 11. I'm a bride-to-be, and the way people are encouraging some bridezilla behavior from me is something I never expected. I got incredibly lucky and found the exact wedding dress I wanted at Goodwill in my size with the tags on. And people are like, "Shh, don't tell people. Tell them you got it for $1,000. Brag about how much you got it for." Yeah, no. I'm more proud that I found it thrifting. Also, for brides on a budget, this is where I found mine. Lots of great affordable options. https://www.shopgoodwill.com wedding. Story 12. Got into a huge fight about broccoli on the honeymoon. All my fault, of course. I knew then it was a mistake. Toughed it out for 2 more years of abuse before I left. So glad I did. Story 13. According to my mill, I'm the bridezilla. We had a max limit of 36 people, including ourselves and my son. My mill gave me a guest list which included, you guessed it, 36 names. She assured me that not everyone would come, but that they would be very appreciative of the invite. I felt gross by that and left the decision up to my husband since it was his family. Needless to say, they all got invites. I had asked for RSVPs to be given a few months before the wedding. Since the MIL had used up all of the guest list, I had greatly reduced my side of the guest list to 4 people, with some on hold until I knew the exact numbers. I finally lost it 2 weeks before the wedding, when I still didn't have RSVPs. She said she would work on it and get back to me. A week before the wedding, she said one family also needs to bring 9 other people because they were going on a family trip, and our town was on the way, so they would all be here anyway. I flat out said no and called her out on the BS. I cut off the guest list, said that I was inviting the rest of my guest list, and that whoever hadn't RSVP'd didn't get a chair or plate. Right up to the day of the wedding, they were making changes. We got married at a Chinese buffet so that it would be the simplest planning and everyone would have something that they like to eat. My dress was $40 off Amazon. My flowers were $20 from Costco. We had a Dairy Queen ice cream cake for the wedding cake, yet she still makes it out that I was the bridezilla. Story 14. My coworker married a crazy bridezilla. I'll try to just hit the bullet points of what happened leading up to, during, and after the wedding, but it's still a lot. 1. The moment he proposed, she lost her drive. According to him, she also basically stopped acting like the woman he fell in love with and started acting like her real self, which was batshit crazy. 2. A week after he proposed, she quit her job because her full-time job was now planning the wedding. The wedding was horrible. I'm getting there. 3. She had a fight with his mother because the bride demanded the groom's mom pay for half the wedding, but get zero input and wasn't allowed to contribute to the guest list, which was 95% the bride's friends and family. 4. Brid, who was 30 years old, subsequently egged her future Miles' house. 5. When bride and groom had a spat about the egging, he went to the work the next day, and she shaved her head and sent him video of her screaming and sobbing as she buzzed her hair off in the bathroom. I worked with him. He showed me the video when he said he had to leave, and I strongly urged him to have her assessed by a psychiatrist. He made a dumb joke about sexy with a crazy girl is the best kind, and I pitied him. 6. Wedding was in a pool clubhouse in summer. It was much too small for the 150-plus people they invited. Someone forgot to turn the AC on until after the place was packed. A lifeguard showed up in a swimsuit to turn it on, but it did little given it was already sweltering. 7. 2 rows of chairs in the clubhouse were ribboned off with reserved signs on them, so no one sat in them. They were later occupied by the 6 seated bridesmaids, leaving about a dozen chairs open once the wedding started. The one groomsman stood by the groom and didn't sit. Elderly people were left standing or reduced to sitting on the floor as there was no way to get to the chairs once the ceremony started. 8. Bride showed up 90 minutes late, having been unhappy with her hair, wig, and makeup, so she took it all off and did it herself. So all the guests are standing for the one. 5 hours waiting for her. Groom was literally standing at the altar, sweating his off in a wool suit in the South's high summer, and was clearly not sure if she would show up. He looked like he felt sick. 9. When bride showed up, she burst into the clubhouse, marched down the aisle, and snapped at the officiant to hurry up and get started. 10. During the prayer, while the religious groom had his head bowed, she turned to wave at everyone. I don't pray, so I was looking up. Then she told her mother to go get her some water. She drank a bottle of water during the prayer and kept grinning and waving at people in attendance, paying zero mind to her groom in front of her. 11. When the ceremony was over, tables were crammed into the clubhouse, and apparently only family and immediate friends of the bride had seats at tables. The rest of us were going to be standing outside during the reception. So I didn't see a dance, a speech, the cake cut, nothing. 12. The food was served outside in the southern U.S. July heat with bugs everywhere. The bride made the groom go get her food over and over. He meekly stood in line with the other 150 people until people insisted he go sit and let them get food. Nope, she told him to get food, so he said he had to be the one to get her food. 13. She never left her table, never greeted any of her guests. 14. Apparently, they had a massive fight as they were leaving the following day for the honeymoon, Bride laying all the failures of the wedding she planned at him and his mom's feet. She threw his luggage out of the car and tried to drive to the airport by herself, but he had their tickets and jumped on the hood to stop her from driving off in his car. 15. He got fired about a month after the wedding because he kept showing up late, leaving early, and leaving in the middle of day, usually because she called him with some crisis. 16. 1 year after the wedding, I got a thank you note for my wedding gift, which was signed by just the bride with a note that said, "As you may have heard, Ryan and I have had bumpy start in our first year as a married couple, and we're separated now. Thanks for the lovely gift." They divorced a couple months later. Story 15. When I got married, I saw why women become bridezillas. Lots of unsolicited advice, criticism, requests, and stupid comments. When we sent out our invites, I included a line that said, "Do you have a request you think we should make? Click on this link to start." It was a link to PayPal for a donation. If you're going to give us your unsolicited advice, you should join in on the funding. People got the message. Story 16. I didn't marry the bridezilla, but I had coordinated her wedding. We had a death in the family, 6-month-old baby, a few days prior to the wedding. I called the bride and told her the situation and said that my assistant would be stepping in for me so that I could attend the funeral. She told me to send my assistant to the funeral and that I had better be at her wedding. I told her I would be sending her a refund and that no one would be coming to her wedding. The groom ended up leaving her after this whole thing went down. Suffice to say, he really dodged a bullet there. Story 17. I have performed a few ceremonies that came about because things fell through for whatever reason, only one of which I had to walk away from. I had received a call from my SIL that one of her friends was supposed to get married and the priest had passed away the week before. They didn't want to change the date and move anything, so they had asked if she knew anyone who could help out. I said sure. When is the wedding? It was supposed to be in an hour. Okay, I was on my way home from work, where I had finished up an important meeting. I miss meeting in person, and was reasonably well dressed, so I called home to say I was going to be late. When I arrived, the happy couple had looked at me and asked if I had proper priest's vestments. No, I don't, and if I did, I would probably not be carrying them in my car. The bride had asked if I was able to go buy some and come back. I told her that I wouldn't begin to know where to buy something like that. The groom then told me that if I can't even try, then maybe I should leave. I did. My SEL told me they cornered a priest at the church and told him he had to marry them or they would sue the church for a breach of contract and that it was the moral thing to do. They divorced 9 months later when her surprise baby was a different ethnicity than he was. Didn't help that he had a side piece as well. Story 18. A bit of a change-up, not a bridezilla, but a groomzilla. A friend of my father was remarrying. It was both his and the bride's second time around, both in their early 40s, and an arranged marriage. Think Indian Orthodox Muslim stuff. The guy was an utter groomzilla. He demanded that every event be at top-notch hotels with obscenely expensive catering and hired string quartets and whatnot for the entertainment. Mostly paid out of the bride's family's pocket, I might add. The parties on the nights leading up to the main wedding event were opportunity enough for him to make a rather public of himself, talking at the top of his voice and showboating the entire time. But the kicker came the next day, when the bride was missing from her own wedding's reception. Obviously, it was very odd and conspicuous, and the few relatives from her side made some non-committal excuses about her not feeling well, etc. Turns out, this had divorced the poor woman right after he'd had his wedding night fun. He said that he didn't like her enough, and that's an almost literal quote. So he gave her the triple divorce thing, and that was it. The marriage was officially over before the festivities even ended. Story 19. First wife was a bridezilla. During the honeymoon, she realized she was married and the wedding day was history. She wanted the big wedding, which she had, not the marriage. The next 2 years were until she finally tapped out. I was young and stupid, and the thought of divorce never crossed my mind. I don't know why it didn't. I guess I just assumed I'd be miserable the rest of my life. When she told me she was leaving, it felt as if the weight of the world was off of my shoulders. On a happy note, her parents were still paying off the wedding when we divorced. That's what happens when you allow your daughter everything she wanted, including 2 wedding dresses. Story 20. Married a groomzilla. We are talking costume changes between wedding and reception, yelling at the wedding planner, drag out all-night fights about whether we can add fruit kebabs so people would maybe get enough to eat, all that. There was zero compromise. He made a lot of promises for things I had been wanting after the wedding, and they never materialized, like a beach vacation and such. Turns out, no compromise at the wedding meant no compromise anywhere else, so I left him after 4 years of marriage. Best decision ever. Best. Story 21. My uncle married one. She had a spending problem, went clubbing in her 40s thinking she was 20, acted like she was better than everyone, couldn't keep friendships, and she cheated on my uncle with a man 15 years her junior. My uncle is remarried and happy. Edit. Sorry, not to imply there's something wrong with going clubbing at all. More so that she'd abandoned her day-to-day priorities in order to focus on clubbing as a lifestyle. Clubbing almost every single weekend, both Friday, Saturday, rather than finding time to spend time with kids at home. Getting drunk and needing to sleep over friends' house who may not be comfortable with staying out that late. Getting mad at said friends because they don't want to go clubbing. The issue was less about liking clubs, but more about the obsession that many don't have. That's why I added acting like she's 20. Acting like, if you're childless, have little responsibilities and have friends who enjoy that thing, go for it. But at 40-ish, there's a bit of prioritizing and it starts to become difficult. Story 22. Been married 14 years. She's definitely a pain in the sometimes, but so is everyone else. I'm also pretty laid back, so a lot of decisions I leave to her because I just don't care. If it's a decision I do care about, I make the decision. Without her, I wouldn't have the 3 best kids on earth. She's an amazing mom, and our kids have our best qualities. We have fun all the time. I think she was a bridezilla. Not because she was a crazy person. It was more about making the moment right for everyone and making it a great memory. She had a relatively rough life with her parents, and there weren't a ton of great memories. I notice she goes way out of her way to make great memories for the kids, as she's always planning stuff for us to do with them. I'm gonna keep her. Story 23. Kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. My wife and I eloped a few months before our wedding and kept it mostly a secret. Then on the day of, we could just focus on having an awesome party for us and our friends. Our pastor canceled the day of after standing is up for the rehearsal. My wife checked into the hotel the morning of, and the lady asked lady at counter, "Is there anything else I can help you with?" Wife jokingly, "Yes, a pastor." LAC. Our omelet chef is ordained. LS. "Hey, Tony, you busy tonight?" Tony. "No." Wife. "Okay." Story 24. I was a bridezilla. It was a small wedding, like 50 people. Was going to be at a park. Very casual. Everything was handmade or from the dollar store. I only ended up with a dress from a David's because my first little boho dress I ordered was more of a shirt, so my mom and friends took me dress shopping. My mom told the lady not to tell me any prices, but I told her under $200. I tried on one dress and cried because I loved it so much. My mom bought it, and I later looked it up and saw it was $3,000. So that changed everything. No more wedding at a park. So we booked a small venue. We served pizza and pies still, and the groomsmen were still wearing polos and shorts. Bridesmaids were still in some Rue 21 dresses I bought for them. I only became a bridezilla the day of. None of my family I had invited showed up, so my husband's side was full and mine was empty. Even our friend sat on his side. Our MC read the speech I wrote before we were even at the altar. Our camera died, so we didn't get the recording. I tripped going up to the altar. I had herniated a disc a week before the wedding, so I was miserable and in so much pain. I cried so hard afterwards, it felt like it was terrible, like everything was ruined. I did my best to hold it together, but I was so relieved when it was over. If I could do it all over, I would change everything, especially how I acted. None of that excuses my snippy behavior or my crying. Just because I was stressed and upset and hurting doesn't give me the right to make others feel bad. Edit. I really appreciate the reassurance, but I definitely wasn't nice to the people trying to help, and I'll always regret the way I acted. Story 25. My mom was a mother of the bridezilla. She's an all-right lady generally, with her annoying habits here and there, but damn. Woman cried because we refused to have a receiving line. We got married in our backyard. The reception was on the other side of the yard. Why would we have a receiving line? She was beside herself for the better part of an entire year, worrying what we would do if it rained. We had a giant tent and ordered like 20 umbrellas. She also had a cow that the hem on her dress had gotten pulled loose by the ridiculous rhinestone stilettos she chose to wear. To a wedding in a yard, on grass. I told my MOH to get her some duct tape, and my mother again cried her eyes out. To this day, she complains about the fabric runner we used for the aisle because her heels dug into it, saying how silly of a choice that was. Everyone in the wedding party was aware of it and wore wedges or flats, but she snorted that that wasn't elegant. She loathed that I wore ballet flats. She was also appalled that for our rehearsal dinner, which was at our home, since that's where our wedding was, consisted of takeout from our favorite local pizza and sandwich place, and the rehearsal itself was all of 10 minutes. She decried it for being borderline trashy. Thankfully, following the ceremony, my brother gave her a joint and all was well and happy for the party thereafter. Story 26. I think I was reverse bridezilla. I've been married twice. First time around, had a medium-sized, stressful church wedding. Parents probably spent $20K on the whole shindig about 20 years ago. Marriage lasted less than 5 years. Next time I got engaged, I was like, yeah, been there, done that on the whole big wedding thing. Kinda think it's a scam. Not interested in planning or paying for one of those ever again. My parents had already been tapped enough, and I still felt bad that they'd had to shell out for a wedding when the marriage was over so quickly. I said we should go to the JP and maybe have a nice dinner at a restaurant. However, my husband was a little younger, had never been married, and his huge family was all excited over the idea of a big white wedding for their only boy. So he dug in his heels and said that he really wanted a wedding, and could we please come to a compromise? My compromise, which I did not expect him to take me up on, was that if he really wanted a wedding, he could plan and pay for it himself. He excitedly agreed. Well, folks, I'm here to tell you that he did was as good as his word. I was 100% checked out of the entire wedding planning. Zero stress level. I was a few months pregnant and working, so this was very agreeable to me. I literally showed up when he told me. I did go buy a wedding dress from David's Bridal, pointed to the first reasonably priced, reasonably attractive gown I saw, tried it on, and was out the door with it in 15 minutes. Wedding day comes, and my husband-to-be has gone all out. His whole family had pitched in, and they had produced a band, a sit-down dinner, flowers, a cake, horse and carriage, photographer, everything. Considerably more fun than my first wedding, and less money spent overall. Never had so much fun in my whole life. Everything was a surprise because I legitimately had no idea what he'd arranged. My parents were so thrilled that they didn't have to pay for a big wedding again that they sent us on a pretty nice honeymoon instead. So I guess I married Groomzilla? But it was pretty awesome all around, no complaints. Story 27. This might be a disappointing answer, but I think the Bridezilla term is overused, and as some have pointed out, this particular stressful event can break people down. Imagine you're a bride trying to plan a $30K day, and your partner, who only had to pick the band, is 1, not being very helpful, and 2, not even engaging this monumental logistical task. 3, hasn't even picked the band, which is the 100th task he has let slip along the way. Then you're also dealing with vendors who, let's face it, are often fucking embarrassingly bad at offering their services. Pile on top of that the family politics, social expectations, and the regular parts of life that don't stop, and bam! One day, you just get mad at someone, and it works. They finally do that thing you asked for half a dozen times. But now you're a Bridezilla, which is a pointlessly gendered title that ignores all the above and further shames you for having the will to push through all the resistance instead of just giving up. I understand some of the stories in here show truly awful behavior, but I don't think being a Bridezilla is a sure sign of anything. My wife is 100% more relaxed than me in all situations, other than the run-up to our wedding, and I am several years into a blissful union. Story 28. Before reading these comments, I thought a Bridezilla was a woman huge and strong enough to be compared to Godzilla, and entered the thread eagerly expecting to read stories about grooms getting lifted and carried off into the sunset on wedding day. I am very disappointed. Story 29. Our friend. He and my husband met when kids so think about almost 20 years of friendship. Married a Bridezilla, she is evangelical, and religion is pretty much her life, and he was agnostic, nice metalhead geek guy. They asked us to be one of the best man/woman. Me and my husband, we are both tattooed, and when we arrived at the wedding, we were his only friends. Everyone in that big wedding was from her, now also his, church. Well, the preacher kept saying to him he had his old life and now his new life, his old friends and now the new friends. Yada, yada, yada. But all the time criticizing his old ways, the authentic way, and everyone kept looking at me and my hubby like we were beasts. Worst day ever. She is that kind of person that wants to be an influencer. Every damn thing is in her Instagram. Their relationship seems perfect there, but he always seems so unhappy, so apathetic, especially when we used to see him, before the pandemic. Always talking about how they are so different, how things are like she wants. Her stories are basically she saying he does nothing right. It's even humiliating. She made him stop talking to us this last week. He got out of every group we had. He stopped answering my husband, who is very sad he lost his friends. I believe she is the one replying the few weird messages he gets. That's the Bridezilla. It seems to be really usual for the Bridezilla to act up on social media, but in the real life is all messy. Story 30, I was called the Bridezilla. After getting back with my ex-boyfriend I broke up with from high school, his parents got into his head that he should propose. His parents got married at the age of 19, and they thought that since we're 19, we should follow in their footsteps. We were only back together for over 1 month at that point. Nothing against anyone that married young or married suddenly. He proposed I was excited because this is supposed to be an important moment in my life, and I can plan the beautiful wedding I always dreamed of. I immediately started to look at venues, since we had 10 months to plan. His mom complained to everyone behind my back that I was planning too soon. His family are strict Catholics, so when I said I didn't want to have a mass for our wedding, they made sure the priest talked to me to convince me to change my mind. When I planned to go wedding dress shopping, she complained again about how I was doing it too soon, 8 months out from the wedding, and then she brought some of her kids without asking me. On top of that, I invited a mutual friend of ours, and I got a text from that friend on my way to the bridal shop asking if she could bring her kids, because my fiance's mom told her to. His mom also got mad at me for not including all 7 of her daughters in the wedding party. Whenever I tried to plan wedding stuff with my fiance, he couldn't handle it because planning the proposal took too much energy out of him. That lasted a few months. Whenever his family tried controlling the wedding, I got bothered because they were planning around themselves. They said that this isn't about me and my fiance, it's about their family, because their family is a big deal, and this wedding was about them. Overall, they called me Bridezilla to my face multiple times because I didn't like how they were controlling my wedding. Within those few months, I remembered why I broke up with my fiance the first time, so I broke up with him again. F that. Story 31. Do you mean off the TV show or just in general? My wife totally took over our wedding plans, but to be fair, I just left her to it. I could see how much her perfect day meant, and to be honest, there was very little I would have changed anyway. We have very similar tastes. 17 years on, we have discussed it, and she genuinely thought we had come to joint decisions over everything. I pointed out she booked a band and DJ from a magazine, even though I worked for an entertainment agency and knew some much better artists, and it kind of hit home. We agreed that for our 20th anniversary, we would arrange a celebration together. At the end of the day, it is the celebration and the people that make a day special. If you get that right, the details are not important. Story 32. My sister was a bridezilla. She asked me to be her bridesmaid. The dresses were hundreds of dollars, and my mom ended up paying for it because she knew I couldn't afford it. $70 in alterations later, the stupid dress finally fit. I lived in Edmonton at the time, and my sister was in Abbotsford, BC, by Vancouver. She demanded I fly down for her bachelorette party. Fine. $300 for a flight there, and my drove out for the wedding and picked me up. $200 gas there, $200 back. The party was a week before the wedding, so when I flew down, I just stayed until the wedding. Stayed with my mom until my sister kicked me out on the night before her wedding. Wanted a special night with her 2 maids of honor. I was the only just bridesmaid, and therefore couldn't be there. During the bachelorette party, I was told I needed to bring booze for myself and the bride. Fine. Went to the liquor store, and she ran up $100 on my card with what she wanted. Whatever, it's her wedding. Proceeds to drink none of it. Went to bed at the hotel early because she was, for some reason. Then gave my alcohol, all $100 of it, to her husband for his bachelor party the next night. Okay, fine. Then she gets my gift for them wasn't off her registry. I looked at the registry and there was nothing under $200. Bitch even put a $900 vacuum on there. Then has the to get angry that I was a bridesmaid and didn't spend enough on her. All said and done, her stupid wedding cost me over $1,000, and like I said, my mom paid the $300 for my dress. She then didn't speak to me for years after, and only to tell me that she didn't want me as a bridesmaid, and I ruined her wedding. That she only asked me out of courtesy, and that the spot was actually meant for her wedding planner, our cousin. Bitch. Dunno if she's happily married or not, we don't keep in touch. Her wedding ruined our relationship. Story 33. My brother married a bridezilla. She yelled at my mother the day of for asking her where she wanted certain decorations at the reception site. There wasn't a written plan, so my mom had nothing to go off of. Never thanked my parents for financially contributing to the wedding. Accused a bridesmaid of trying to upstage her by getting a spray tan before the wedding. My brother wanted me to be in the wedding party, but she told him to his face that I was too pretty to be in the wedding party, and all of her bridesmaids had to be less attractive than her. Stole my SIL jacket in the middle of the reception, literally took it off her back, because one of the bridesmaids was cold. It was a night reception in the spring, the girl should have brought a jacket. The list goes on. Well, they got divorced about a year later because apparently her demanding attitude carried over into the marriage. Needless to say, the rest of my family had a little party when we heard about the divorce. Story 34. Not a guy, but I'm pretty sure my venue thinks I'm a bridezilla. The situation was that I asked for a second tasting. I was calm and asked via email. Even had my fiance read it before sending. The reason? I told them I'm a vegetarian several times prior, and when I got to the first tasting, I couldn't eat anything, and they even put bacon on the salad they served me. We also asked for absolutely no bacon pig because we had quite a few people coming who didn't eat it for religious reasons. My fiance had like 7 full-size dishes around him, and I was just sitting there with a glass of wine for over an hour. They were very rude and treated me like a bridezilla when I came for the second tasting.